Welcome to Open Classroom, the Brown Schools Digital Forum for Community and Conversation. We are so glad that you're here with us today. My name is Laurie McConnell. I'm Communications Coordinator here at the Brown School at Washington University in beautiful St. Louis. It's gorgeous out today. I just want to very quickly do a little bit of housekeeping. We're using a webinar format, so that means that we don't get to see or hear you, but we would love to know your thoughts, your questions. Please feel free to post them in the chat at any time. If a question comes up, something that was said during the presentation and you're curious about it or you have a thought about it, put it in right then, and our presenters would love to respond to you in real time. So feel free to do that at any time. Just use the chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I also want to let you know that we're streaming live right now on YouTube. So if you have a colleague or a friend who wasn't able to get registered for the webinar but would love to watch us live, you can send them to our YouTube, and I'm going to put that in the chat right now so you can have that for later as well, because we will record the program and you can catch it there. You can also see it at any time on our Open Classroom website. And I'll put that link in the chat also. And so it will be put there in perpetuity, so you can go there and watch it if there's something that you missed or something you want to catch again. The Open Classroom website is the perfect place to go. I also just sort of want to tease some future Open Classroom programs that you can still get registered for. On October 20th, it will be the final webinar in this 6-webinar series from the AASWSW. It's titled Collaborative Approaches to Addressing Historical and Intergenerational Trauma. That's October 20th. Then October 27th, we continue with our artificial intelligence series with Internet of Medical Things, predicting clinical outcomes with wearables, a fascinating clinical trial involving Fitbits. And I want to call out a special Open Classroom coming up November 17th, Social Work Responds to the Election. We're going to have a huge panel of social workers who are discussing the results of the midterms. So you can go to that Open Classroom website link and register for any and all of the programs you'd like to attend. They're free and they're better when you join us, so we hope to see you there. But now, the important thing, today's program, it is my pleasure to introduce Amanda Rhodes. Amanda is project manager for the AASWSW. And Amanda, I'm going to let you explain, if you'd like to, the thought behind this webinar series and introduce our wonderful presenters for today.
Thank you, Laurie, and thank you for organizing us today. As Laurie mentioned, I'm Amanda Rhodes, and I'm a project manager with the American Academy for Social Work and Social Welfare. Thank you for joining us all today for session 5 of the 6 in our series related to the Academy's work in advancing the 21st century child welfare research agenda. This work is meant to drive science and research to have an impact on children and child well-being as we look toward the future. Since May of 2019, a diverse group of researchers, policy experts, DEI experts, and people with lived experience within the child welfare system have worked together to identify research gaps to enhance the 21st century research agenda to support child and family well-being. The end goal is for the findings from this work to support innovative policy change and change in funding. I will share a link to the executive summary from this work that notes the top research gaps identified so that you all can read more and find out more about the project. And today there will be 3 audiences that are hearing our presenters' remarks, including those of you who are joining us live, which we greatly appreciate, those who are joining us on the live stream, and then the many people who will be able to see this recording after the presentation. So I will now briefly introduce our 2 presenters today. We have Priscilla Shorter, who is a parent advocate with the NYU Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and Mary Acri, who is a research associate professor at the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at NYU Grossman School of Medicine, as well as a research associate professor at the Brown School at Washington University. So thank you to Mary and Priscilla for being with us today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, nice to meet everyone, although again, we can't see you. I'll be moving through the slide deck. And again, we want this to be an interactive presentation. So any questions, please feel very free to utilize the chat and we'll do our best to monitor it. As Amanda just mentioned, I'm a research associate professor at NYU Grossman School of Medicine. In the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and I've worked alongside Priscilla Shorter, who is an amazing peer professional with over 2 decades of experience in family support and advocacy. I realized that while we're talking about research and the utilization and partnership with peers in research activities is the prominent topic, I think hearing Priscilla's voice is the most meaningful aspect of this presentation. And so as much as Priscilla is going to contribute is very welcome. So in terms of our overview of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about peer-delivered family support services because peers utilized in family support is a little bit different than youth peer advocates, as well as peers working with adults with mental health needs. Also, I'll present 2 initiatives involving peers, and throughout, Priscilla will be bringing in her expertise and knowledge about these issues or these topics, as well as research partnerships from her perspective. And then we'll open it up more formally for a question and answer. All right. So family support services originated over 3 decades ago, and these are defined as services that are directed towards caregivers of children with mental health problems to help them effectively address the needs of their families. So again, as I just mentioned, it's different from a youth peer who works with a youth with mental health problems, as well as an advocate or a peer who works with adults with mental health problems. This is targeting specifically the family members of children who have a mental health need. Peer-delivered family support services are a subset of the larger grouping of family support services. So it is that peer that is providing support. And peer-delivered family support services has been expanding nationally. We had to update these numbers because last we ran this review. It was far less, but it's growing so fast. The National Federation of Families is credentialing in more than 120 chapters. 33 states offer either family support services, youth support services, or both. There's been a big movement across the country, and especially in New York State, where Priscilla and I are both based, to make family support services a billable service. And currently Medicaid allows billing for peer services in 33 states. So the objective of peer-delivered family support services is really about empowerment, walking alongside a caregiver of children with a mental health need and helping to mobilize and give them the resources and to use their expertise as a family member of the child with mental health needs to be able to navigate the service system. And theoretically, there are 4 key components of empowerment that peer advocates embody: understanding and acceptance of the child's diagnosis or mental health need, critical self-reflection about where that family is at and where they need to go, taking charge of their child's care, and perseverance, which is very important considering the fractured, siloed, and what we agree to be inadequate mental health service system with respect to addressing the enormous need amongst kids and adolescents.
And Mary, I'm going to interject here. So all of these components, and there's probably many more, they build on family peer and peers, our self-efficacy, and the importance of our voice and belief that it deserves to be heard, acknowledged, and our input put into action for any policies, anything that has to do with us or our children, our families. These are 4 key components. Like I said, they're theorized as the 4 key components. These are the stepping stones to get us, our family members, peer advocates, into being a whole part of our treatment, our intervention, things designed to treat us. And I just wanted to you know, sometimes you need context for why we as peer advocates and family peer advocates exist. We exist because there's a need for us, an overwhelming need for us. And I've worked in research for the past 10 plus years, and I'm very proud of the work that I do because it's only through research that, you know, families are going to be helped. And I'm proud of the role that I play in helping communities come aboard and see that this is how we're going to make a lasting change. So this is why family peer advocates exist. This is why we are what we do. We come out of a need. We come out of a calling. Most of us come from a family member who needs help. And it's not like, you know, there's a job for us. I mean, we just start advocating for our family member. And it leads into, you know, I guess becoming a full-time job that we're nearly not paid enough for, because it comes out of our love for a family member when we see that there's a need, when they're not getting the services that they deserve, and that everyone deserves. So I want to talk about like why we exist, but more importantly, why I exist. A little bit of background about myself. I've been initiated into being a family peer advocate 30 years ago at the birth of my son, a little bit over 30 years ago, because I found that he had sickle cell anemia while I was pregnant with him. And over the course of my life, I spent so much time and energy advocating for his health, his education, his mental health, his health again, that it became a job. It led to opportunities for me to make it a job, but it's more so than that. I represent my community as a whole, and I represent the community of mental health, families with children who have mental health issues. This is why we're here. We come to this whole profession as caregivers first and foremost, and we bring along other people because we remember what it feels like to be alone and isolated and trapped by our own fear and anxiety, and we never want another person to go through that again. And that is the thing that's why I participate in research. I want to bring along my community who sometimes they're resistant to research, to let them know this is the only way we're going to affect change in our communities and in our and help our loved ones in the long run. And maybe our loved ones won't benefit from it directly, but someone else coming behind us will, and they won't feel as alone as we felt. And a lot of times we do presentations and things like that, and you know, the people behind the research studies and the theories and the non-identifiers and all the things that go into research that I've come to know and I appreciate. But I just want to remind everyone out there that these are people behind this. These are families. It's not just, and the reason why I love children's mental health and the people that I work with is because we take the whole family into consideration. It's not just a child. We have to help the mother. We have to help the whole family as a whole unit. So I always take it as my charge to let anyone who's in the research environment, the research field, know that behind everything you're studying, every theory that you have, everything that you want to help, these are actually real families behind this. And you can't, I know you have to keep your research hat on and you need data and you need numbers so that you can push forward and get funding. But there are people behind research. These are actual real problems and real issues, like really real issues, like life and death issues sometimes that our families and our communities are facing behind the studies behind the numbers, behind what you need to prove. You know, just keep that in mind when you are going into communities and seeking their help to research your theories. So this is just want to interject here a little bit on that, and you know, give like a framework of why or personal connection to why we do what we do. Like if you meet any peer advocate or any family peer advocate, there's a long story behind why they're doing what they're doing. And it comes from a lot of pain and suffering to get their child or get their loved one through a difficult time, but also to get them the services that they need that's not easily accessible. So you need someone to advocate for you. You know, this whole profession is not, we're here because there's a dire need for us to be the mouthpiece for our loved ones who are not getting what they need. So just to keep that in mind, like we're here because there's a dire need for us. And I just want to give a background of why we exist, why I exist. I exist for my son, and then all the other mothers that come behind me who have issues with the mental health system, the physical health system, just the medical system. That's a whole nother ball of wax. It's like we're in every aspect. You know, we're in schools, we're in hospitals, we're in the mental health system, we're in the juvenile justice system. We're in every aspect where there needs, where we need to be, because things are just not being done system wide. Not trying, you know, it's a system wide problem. It's not blaming any particular provider, but if providers could realize this is why we're here, this is why we want to work with you, is because there is a need for us in all these different systems, across all systems of helping people. That's, you know, just wanted to put that out there, because behind all the theories, all of the theories that we, as PhDs and people who are interested in studying all the different problems that we have to access, this is part of it. So we're actually people behind the numbers, and just to keep that in your mind as you're moving forward with any type of research studies or any type of programs you want to put on a community. We are people behind that, and you need to enlist us in any type of research you want to do. So I'm sorry, Mary, that was great. Segue.
That was great. So Priscilla did allude to theory a little bit, trying to find a unified theory as to the benefits and the unique benefits of a peer advocate has been on many research agendas. Some of the theoretical models or premises that have informed the peer work is social support theory. So the provision of support, including emotional support, information about resources, concrete skill building, advocacy. So those supports are posited to buffer against stress and adversity. There's also social learning theory, which is that interacting with peers, peers are modeling a way to especially navigate the mental health service system. And interestingly enough, a review that we had done a couple of years ago found that peers do 2 levels of advocacy. So they're advocating for families, and then the family is learning how to advocate for their family through the peer and that interaction. And then finally, social comparison theory. So seeing a peer like Priscilla, who is at the top of her game, who has worked so tirelessly, is a motivator and is hopeful for other families. There may be days where it's more challenging, and that's realistic, that, you know what, there are good days and bad days to everyone's situation. So I alluded a little bit to this. the review that we had conducted a couple of years ago, wow, over a decade, I thought it was yesterday, where we reviewed programs and services that targeted families of children with mental health needs. And this was a broader study. But what we were really interested in is how many peer-delivered family support services have really been empirically studied. What kinds of supports are peers given to families, and what are the impacts of those interventions? So we found 50 distinct programs, and the citations here if you want to read about it a little bit more in detail. But of them, 11 were delivered by a peer. And what we found is that there were 5 primary types of supports that peers or anyone really providing family support engages in. And I mentioned a couple of those. So informational or educational support, instructional or skills development support, so coaching on ways to address their child's illness, emotional support, instrumental support, so provision of concrete services like respite and transportation, and then that 2-step advocacy that I mentioned. But Priscilla, this doesn't really capture, as I know, but you know even more so, all the roles that peers assume. So can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah. I would highlight the emotional and affirmational support to be one of the strongest one that we do, and that's a part of how we engage our families. And it's also the transparency that we have in using our lived experience to illustrate each one of these. We can bring examples from our own life struggles, from our own life going up against any of these particular agencies. And that with the emotional and affirmational support is really the bulk of how we empower our families to move forward and to realize that they have a voice, and to realize that their voice is worthy of being heard. Just using our life experiences when it's applicable, we can use, that's one of the best things that we have in our arsenal, is the transparency and is the permission that we have to use our life experiences in navigating all of these different things, all of these, educational, when we've been blocked by the education system, when we've been blocked by the social service system, when we've had questions about medication. We can use our life stories to inspire, to decrease the stigma that comes along with having a child with challenges in this society. We use so much of ourselves and our life story to decrease stigma, which increases the engagement of our family members and increases their. They look at us and they see, well, you've gone through some of the same things I've gone through, and your child seems to be successful now. Because it's a marathon that we do with our loved ones. A lot of times it's a marathon. It's not a straight track race. It's a marathon, and we have our ups and downs. But being able to use our life story and our lived experience and going through a lot of the same issues and a lot of the same problems and coming up against a lot of the same agencies is amazing in how we can support and empower and give the emotional and affirmational support to our families. But it also transfers to all the other types of support, the informational stuff, because we give them what we've learned. It's the instructional stuff. We transfer what we've learned and what worked best for us. And we're never forcing anything on anyone, but we give them ideas. We brainstorm. But we pull on our lived experience, which is one of the most powerful things that we have in our arsenal. And instrumental support. I mean, we provide conflict services because we have relationships with people who we've received services from, and we know the best ones to recommend. And then the advocacy, that's built into our blood. We're going to do that, and it comes from our lived experience in having to be in these, having to have gone forth before them to advocate for our own kids and advocate for other children. But as Mary said, it goes that transparency that we have to use our life and our lived experience. To me and my whole career, that's been such a transformative thing that I've used to engage family members and to empower them to know that they can overcome the challenges that they have right now, because I did. And once they see that, once they hear that, that's one of the best things we have in our arsenal that applies to each one of these types of family support, is that we can use our life experiences where clinicians can't, or they're, it's not really encouraged. And that's what I'll say about that. As my experience as being a family advocate for the last 20 plus years, not more.
Thank you, Priscilla. I'm just scrolling through a couple of slides that I've sort of duplicated or gotten ahead of. We did find, interestingly enough, that the peer-delivered services that were provided were associated with improvement in caregiver outcomes. The literature in and of itself isn't as robust as we would like it. In part, that's guided by funding. So what folks are being funded to study. But in the larger literature beyond this review, we as if I've been part of every research study, findings include reduced stigma and distrust about mental health services. Utilizing a peer has improved activation in seeking care, improved self-efficacy, which Priscilla spoke about quite a bit, and improved knowledge about children and mental health. And that is associated with the use of higher quality services for kids. So there's a lot of benefits that, in addition to these, that I think anecdotally we know, studies I've been part of that really feel the connection with a peer and feel like this person has been where I am, and we can walk together. So there is a lot of evidence that suggests that the therapeutic alliance is that much quicker developed and deeper because of that shared experience. So I want to speak a little bit about the type of overarching model that I am guided by when I'm partnering with peers. And it's really a CVPR approach. So at the most fundamental level, community and members of the community are an active voice in the research, and they participate in all aspects of the research project from the beginning to the end. So Priscilla and I just recently submitted a grant. It was scored, which is exciting. We're going to go back in, but Priscilla and other studies I've worked with peers on have really been instrumental in guiding the research. And so I just want to emphasize that we do follow Hatch's principles in terms of what does it mean to collaborate and how do you collaborate. And for the research I do, it's a very flat structure, meaning everyone has an equal voice. I think, Priscilla, if you wanted to speak about not necessarily my research, but the projects that you're part of, and what is your role research on those research teams?
Yeah, I've been so fortunate to work with people like Mary McKay and Kimberly Holwood, Mary Acri, who include family peer advocates in on their research from the very beginning of it, meaning the design of it, the measures, reviewing the measures, what will be used, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. I remember given a packet of measures in one of my research projects, and you know, this is what my research team does, and I so appreciate them for it. Gave me a pack of measures, and it was like, oh, this will take you about a half an hour to do, you know, go do these measures. We want to know from family point of view. And I totally scratched all the measures. I was like, if I had to fill these measures out, I would never participate in your research study, because it pulled up so many, it re-traumatized me over and over again. Like, this is too much. And to have my research team scratch all those things, because I felt like it was so traumatizing to families, I just didn't think that they should have families revisit any traumatizing them. I said, if you're not going to counsel me right after this, do not give me this packet of papers to do. And I'm fortunate, and I'm in a very rare minority that happens, and that they're scratched. I've been so fortunate to work in research projects with Mary, and also with Mary Acri, with also Mary McKay. I was a part of Mary McKay's multiple family group research back, you know, years ago. Now it's an evidence-based practice, as it should be, because it was some of the most amazing work I've ever done. But it was done in collaboration with family peer advocates, the community. The curriculum was designed by clinicians, the community, family peer advocates. And that's why I believe it's such a successful model. I don't know if it's called the 4 R's and 2 S's now. And it's across all different kinds of modalities, but I was fortunate enough to participate in that research. And it was during the research phase, it was some of the best work I've ever done in collaborating with researchers, and then doing the intervention with clinicians and families. It was just some of the best work I've ever done, and I speak of it often. And this is one of the great things about research, and that's why now it's such, you know, it's an evidence-based practice now, because I believe that it was done wholeheartedly to help families, but it included family members, people like myself, family peer advocates, clinicians, community members. I train it now as a trainer. I help train clinicians and other family peer advocates to do the work, because now, like I said, it's an evidence-based practice. And because they use peers and family members from the get-go, and community members, this is why it was so successful. And not just successful with dotting all the T's and crossing all the I's, and everybody Googling. I saw firsthand from my delivery to families how successful and how effective it could be with families. You know, I was able to deliver the intervention with the clinician, with supervision, and I saw firsthand how it helped families in some of the most dire situations become functioning families and to help their children. That's one of the research projects that I worked on. That firsthand, but including me in from beginning. I mean, I came to the project when it was still in the research phase, but from all the back history of it, they included family peer advocates. My mentor, one of my former mentors, Jerry, she was a part of it from the very beginning. Another research project that I'm currently working on now involves family members of young people who have experienced their first psychotic episode. And I've been kind of thrown back into I'm part of the research team, I'm part of the design of the team, but I'm also part of the intervention where I speak with a family member every week, just for support in helping their child with their loved one with this first psychotic episode. And what I'm learning, and families, we need the help. And this research is so important because every family member deserves someone who's had some type of lived experience to help them through, even if it's just to support them and listen to them and to say that I'm here for you and I understand. I know that doesn't go along with what, you need to check off for research purposes. But like I said, there are people behind all of the issues, all of the problems. And this is another area that I hadn't worked with previously. This is another area that just needs so much help and so much support. There's so much system-wide neglect and adversity for just people trying to get their family members treated. And I'm on the front line. And in this research project, I am a part of the research project, which is with the design of the measures and the design of the project, but I'm also providing an intervention. And it's been such a great learning experience. It's been very hard, but it just really sees that there's so much more work to be done in research, in delivery of services for parents who are going through some of the most dire situations with a loved one who's experiencing a psychotic episode and there's really nowhere to go. And I've worked in research with my particular research group now for 10 plus years, and we've had great success and great outcomes. But I'm always a proponent of bringing my community in, which is a community that's resistant. It's the Black community, the African American community. They're kind of resistant towards research for a good reason, previous trauma years ago. But I'm a proponent I'm always going to speak, especially with the research group that I work with, because they know we're all human, and they take it into consideration, and they take my viewpoint very, very seriously as a person of the community, as a person of color, as a person who speaks for the community and who speaks for family peer advocates. And as long as I have that support from my researchers, I will always deliver that to my community, because we're not going to get anywhere if we don't participate in the research, unfortunately, because that's how we get the money. That's how we get the dollars. But you also have to realize you're not just going into communities. You have to go into a community and use the community as far as they're the expert on their community. You have to pull them into whatever research design that you're using. But Mary, this slide is perfect, because community participate in all aspects of research from the very start, not as an afterthought. A lot of times people design research projects, and we've seen it over and over again. And this is what our group gets very right now, because they don't wait to the afterthought. They come in when they go into a community, they have lots of problems. They can't recruit. People don't want to be bothered with them, because you're thinking of us as an afterthought. You should never try to think of not having, if you're researching a community, do not use community partners and parent peer partners or peers as an afterthought. If you're going into community to research a community, they're there from the very beginning. And I cannot stress that enough, from the very beginning, because when you come in as an afterthought, there's already an energy of, I'm an afterthought. You're having problems now, so now you want to bring me in. You need to think about it beforehand. The communities you're going to, you have to be very thoughtful and intentional about the communities that you're trying to study, get information on. And I know it's to help, but you have to be very, very intentional about bringing anybody from that community in on your research from day one. As soon as you have the thought, think about someone you could bring in. And that's I'm a huge proponent of that, but I've been lucky, and I've been so lucky to work with people who that's what they do. It's not that's not the case most places. So
Yeah, and I just want to echo what Priscilla said, that, communities are by nature, where there's been a lot of research done, skeptical at times, because you come in, and I've heard it over and over again, you come in, you do your research. And so how do we create more meaningful partnerships with communities? Really, that entails from the ground up. So from the beginning, really working with them and addressing what it is that's important to them. And that shapes a very fruitful and relevant research endeavor. So I'm going to very briefly just scan through these slides. Again, the references are available to you at the back of the slide deck. The purpose is to describe the role of the peer and how peers have really helped to bring the research to fruition. So there's two projects I'm going to talk about. The first is STAR. It's the Support Team Building and Referral Intervention. And this intervention was really designed to reduce caregiver stress. So peers who worked in family resource centers across New York City, and they were freestanding programs run entirely by peers, and they would provide different levels of support depending on need. So caregiver comes in, my child unfortunately is going to get expelled from school unless they have X, Y, and Z. Can you help? And so that's one of the common scenarios. And again, all the services are free. And the peers working with those caregivers felt like the amount of stress caregivers were experiencing was enormous. And so was there a way in which they could also help the family member manage or reduce their own stress about what was a very difficult situation? So based upon that, we developed the STAR intervention, and there were multiple waves in which we involved peers. So initially, to build this intervention, we, and I say we as if there's more than one of me, I would go to these meetings, the monthly meetings for peers, and say, hey, this is the project. We'd really like to have your voice involved. And so we had 9 peers who were like, yes, we'd love to provide feedback. This is great. And so we worked in tandem to build the intervention and to look to the evidence regarding stress reducing strategies, vet those through the peers, as well as the content and how the sessions flowed. So they were very interested in self-care activities. So we have those embodied really small. So not like for the next 3 days, go to a spa and see, because that's not really feasible. It's not realistic. But are there little things you can do to change for self-care that can sort of ratchet down the stress? And we did collect satisfaction and perceived benefits of this approach. We found that families were really, satisfied with the intervention. Peers liked it so much they started using it. So we had a DVD of calming sort of music, and they were, I remember passing around a lot of those CDs at that time. So that was one way. So the peers not only were part of the intervention build, but they were also part of the execution, which was critical. The second is an extension of STAR. It's called the C program, the Screening, Education, and Empowerment Program. And this, again, was a felt need by peers. Hey, a lot of the caregivers we're seeing aren't really, they might be depressed. I don't know. I'm not a mental health professional, but I feel like there's an unaddressed need here. Can we think of something to help facilitate at least identification if family members are feeling depressed, and then facilitate engagement in services? So we had to keep it within the role and scope of what peers were comfortable doing. So providing education, identification of resources, and so forth. And so we built the intervention. Again, I did something similar. I haunted a couple of peer-delivered organizations. We were able to get a group of peers that helped build the intervention, again, based upon evidence-based practices, so screening caregivers for feelings of sadness. And again, the vernacular here, it's not depression, it's sadness. So all of the wording and verbiage was very carefully vetted by not only the peers who participated, but also 2 senior peers that we employed to review the content. And little things that you don't recognize because we're not peers as important, they were very astute about. For example, one of the senior peers said, hey, instead of being across from the caregiver, can they be right beside you? And that is such a beautiful visual of the peer's role that's physically represented there in how they're seated together. So we piloted this, we did a proof of concept study as well as looked at feasibility and acceptability. I will not bore you with the details because they're boring. No, you can read the article and get whatever, information you want. But we found that, part of what we were looking for is this approach acceptable to peers? Is this within their role? And then for caregivers, is this something that you may have, that you're okay with? Like you're now having a peer ask about your emotional health. Is that okay? And so we found satisfaction was really high. Peers found many benefits and that there were minimal barriers to participation. So here's a quick graph of some of the benefits that peers felt. So they felt it increased their knowledge about depression. It helped build and facilitate a rapport with the caregiver, and it offered legitimacy to the peer's role. Benefits to caregivers included increasing their knowledge and helping the caregiver understand what they're experiencing, as well as empowering them. So those are 2 brief studies. I think it's appropriate to close with Priscilla, any last thoughts that you have regarding this slide or anything we've mentioned thus far?
No, I think I've kind of touched on this throughout, but I just want to go back to your study with how it brought about the sadness or quote unquote depression. And this is why I love research. I've been a part of a couple of research studies where we did family surveys or we did impairment issues. And that was one of the that was a side statistic that we didn't think about, or we weren't anticipating the level of depression that on the depression scale scores what was going on and how quickly we kind of rallied to address that. And that's what I love about doing this work, is because we go in with one thing and we go in with trying to provide this support. We get information about something else that's going on, and then we provide an intervention for that. Or we say, oh, we need to address this, and this is a team that I love to work with. I wasn't on that project with Mary, but I heard about that data. I have been on projects with similar data that came out that they had high depression scores, and we tried to do something about it. This is the work that needs to be done for families, for their families to be successful. You can't have the child without the rest of the family being successful. And if the caregiver is depressed because of everything that's going on, we have to address that. So I love research for those things, especially when we're collecting the right data and we're looking at everything. We're looking at all the qualitative stuff, which is what people are saying, when we're also looking at numbers and the demographics and everything. So yeah, I mean, that was great work. That's all I can say. It was great work, Mary.
Well,
This
you do
is-
great work.
You're both spectacular. This is so fascinating. And we're going to give our attendees a chance to ask any questions or share any thoughts you have. Just go ahead and put them in the chat and we will read them out to our presenters. And if you have to sneak out early, I completely understand if you have a busy schedule, but we are going to give you this little quick survey. It's very brief, just a few questions. The link is in the chat just to ask you, what you thought about the webinar series and ways that we can make it better when it comes back around next year. So just any thoughts that you want to share with us about the series, we would love to hear your thoughts on that. And I have a few questions. One is a sort of a quick and easy one, I think, is you talked about how states are expanding the peer delivered family support services. Do Missouri and Illinois offer peer delivered FSS? Do you know?
I do not know. That would not be hard to find, though. I think a quick Google could pull that up.
Yeah, I think we probably can Google that. And then how do you help empower a parent who hasn't yet fully accepted their child's diagnosis?
I'm going to defer to Priscilla on that.
Well, you meet them where they are. That's part of our motto. You meet them where they are and you build a relationship. You bring in education. You bring in your experience of when you were, quote unquote, in denial. And it's a work in progress. I mean, you use your life story and your transparency, but you meet them where they are. You don't force anything on them. You ask questions about the child, about their relationship. You kind of lead them to, lead them to, okay, well, maybe that's an issue. You ask them, what are teachers saying? What is everyone else saying? But you meet them where they are, and you really don't try to force anything on them, and you use your life experience. Because we're not clinicians, we're not going to force a diagnosis on a child that you don't believe, and then you explore why they don't believe it. You try to go back into their past, or you try to explore their cultural beliefs, because that plays a huge part in it. Their cultural beliefs, how they were raised, why you did, and you can share like your experience as well, especially if you're from the same community that the family, the parent is from. But even if you're not, these are things you explore with them, and to see why there's quote unquote a resistance, because we hate words like resistance and denial. Those are the words we use, but there's always a reason why someone doesn't accept something, and there's always a reason why there's resistance to a diagnosis or a label. You have to realize a lot of communities don't want labels. You build a relationship, and you try to get behind the why there's no acceptance. And I hope that answers your question.
No, that was great. We have another question here about on the advocacy front. Have you found that there's more openness to your work now from people in power? And then it says politicians, administrators.
From where I stand, no. I have to answer honestly. I think that some researchers and some people are seeing the benefit of having peers on staff. And a lot of times, unfortunately, this has been my experiences, like when I was working in the school system in New York City, the advocates were used to get people to see their way of the power. The people that power who were paying my paycheck want to use me to get people to fall in line. So to get me to follow their agenda. So true advocates are gonna, they're gonna bust against the status quo. They're gonna challenge you. They're gonna try to fight for the rights for their families, and then the families that they work with. So I don't think that the powers that be are really yet ready for true advocacy, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. So I don't know what you have to say, Mary, but
your voice is absolutely. I mean, to your point, we did work on a project together where we had the entire staff complete a measure, and one of the instrument questions, if you remember this, Priscilla, was my job, or I make waves, or something like, and
Yes.
the peer in the group was like, but that's my job. My job is
Yes.
absolutely to push against that system
Yeah.
that is pushing us down.
Yep.
So it's just, yeah, to your point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've got a couple more here, but Amanda, did you have questions on your end you wanted to share?
Nope, go right ahead, Lori. Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. Can you describe a meaningful interaction with a family that confirmed for you the value of peer-delivered family support services? That's asking you to get a little personal, and I apologize for that if it makes you uncomfortable, but.
No, it doesn't make me uncomfortable, and I would love to share that. Like I said, I work with Mary McKay's project, the multiple family group, when it was in its research phase. And this is some of the best work I've ever done, and I always say that this is, everywhere I speak, this is an example of the best work I've ever done. A very meaningful, a long story short, the multiple family group research was doing research on children with conduct disorder, ADHD, age 7 to 11, with their family members. Like, so we would do a group every week for 16 weeks. With family members, all the family that was involved in the child's care would come to the meeting, and the meetings were the curriculum, because it was a curriculum that we followed, teaching different things like respect, responsibility, communication. We had a curriculum that was out over 16 weeks, 4 months. We did this. I did it alongside a clinician. And this was a research part of it. And then I went on to become a trainer of it. But the research part of it, I did it alongside a clinician. So I was a parent partner. There was a clinician in the room. We delivered the lessons every week for an hour and a half with families. We would feed them and be a part of, it was a whole nice thing. So we taught them all these different things like rules, how to follow rules, responsibility. And there was a whole family there. And they would do all these activities together. Great, great, great curriculum. And throughout my 16 weeks, this was my first group. Maybe during week 4, we lost a child. One of my parents, who was a mother of 5, lost one of her children, who was one of the identified children in the group. And to my surprise, we were able to come together, kind of revamp the curriculum a little bit to deal with grief. And that family came, they missed one for the funeral. And it was a horrific accident that the child passed away. They missed one session. It came back for all the other sessions, graduated, and we were able to support them and to help keep that family whole and to help keep that family functioning. That was some of the best work I've ever done. It was scary. It was, I was younger. This is about maybe 10, 12 years ago. But it was some of the best work. And when I saw how that curriculum was able, and that curriculum, and not just the curriculum, but my input, because I was the main person speaking with the families every week, getting them to come in, checking in on them, with the clinician, and the guidance of my supervisory team, who were part of the research team. We did that was some of the best work I've ever done in my life, to be able to help a family, a mother and grieving siblings get through that. That's one of the best things I could ever say. And it's some of the best work I've ever done. I keep tabs on the family through Facebook. They're doing amazingly well. You know, all the other 4 children are doing well. And that's some of the best work I've ever done. And that's why I know that being a part of the research, and I believe in it, and I don't push anything I don't believe in, but that was some great work. And I saw it not just through numbers, but I saw it in real life, how that curriculum helped that family and how my input, you know, helped that family as well. So that's one of the most meaningful things I've done as a parent advocate in my career. Some of the best work I've done. And I love that whole curriculum for families.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you, both of you, for the important work you do. We are so grateful that you gave us this time today to discuss it and to share the data and the emotions surrounding that data. To talk about the heart and the head together is really, really important. So we appreciate both of you so much. I wish we had more time, though I'm afraid we're out of time. So I just want to say a quick thank you to Mary and Priscilla for being wonderful presenters today. Thank you, Amanda, for stepping in at the last minute and doing a fantastic job. Just a quick, big thank you to my Brown School colleagues, especially Dale Matthew and Danny Pape and Cynthia Williams and Gary Parker, all of whom are brilliant and dedicated and some of the best teammates I've ever had the honor to work with. And thank you to you, our attendees. You're the reason we do this. And we are so grateful for your time. We know you have busy lives and lots to do. And so we appreciate you spending time with us. If you missed any part of the program, or you want to see it again, or you'd like to look at the slides that were presented today in more depth, you can visit our Open Classroom website. We'll get those posted as quickly as we can. Surely by Monday, we'll have everything posted so that you can look over that stuff. Again, if any of you want to share a quick final thought before we say goodbye, you're welcome to do so.
I won't take up any more time. This was just a pleasure. Thank you.
It definitely was a pleasure. Thank you so much for participating in this, and you're just listening to a family peer advocate's spiel for for a minute. Thank you so much. I so appreciate everyone who's on and your questions and your engagement with Mary and myself.
Yes, and a big thank you to our presenters here and to all who are tuning in with us now. We're grateful for this. It is exactly the example that helps push forward the 21st Century Research Agenda Project. So thank you for sharing with us.
Your voices are very important. We are grateful that you joined us today. So we'll just say a hearty goodbye to everyone. Thank you again. Have a good day. Bye-bye.